Hey class, Mr. Houston here, back with another exciting episode of Geometry Notes. In our last exciting episode, we talked about the tangent ratio, and today we are going to talk about the sine and the cosine ratio. If you remember, our little shortcut for tangent was TOA, because it was opposite over adjacent. Okay, and now we have sine and cosine, and it's so ka. So our little shortcut for these are so, ka, toa. And if you can guess, sine is going to be opposite over hypotenuse, and cosine is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay, so these are all ones that you need to remember. SOHCAHTOA is just a way for you to remember those ones, but that is how we will figure out sine, cosine, and tangent. So the key concept is pretty much what I just told you. The biggest piece of information I can give you right now is making sure that you understand what angle we're talking about. Once we find our angle, then we can go through and say, okay, this leg is our opposite, this is our adjacent, this is always the hypotenuse. Once you identify those, then it's easier to set up the ratios. Okay? Alright, so the first one we're going to deal with is just the sine ratios. We're going to do the sine of S and the sine of R. So we'll just set up sine of S. Remember sine, so. Okay, so O is the opposite, H is the hypotenuse. When we're talking about S, S is here. You go across from it for the opposite, and right next to it is the adjacent. And this is always the hypotenuse. So it's opposite over hypotenuse. So this is going to be 63 over 65. And then you just simply take 63 divided by 65, and you get 0.9692. It does say round to 4 decimal places, so we'll take it out to 4 decimal places. Okay? Then they want you to find the sine of R. So the sine of R, we are now starting here. We are looking for the opposite, so now 16 becomes our opposite. 63 would be our adjacent. Our hypotenuse is still our hypotenuse. In this case, it's going to be 16 over 65, which again, divide that round to 4 decimal places, 0.2462. Okay, again, sine, opposite over hypotenuse. All right. At that same token, we're going to look at cosine ratios as well. When we're dealing with cosine, again, it may help for you to write this out every time. Cosine is so, sine was so, cosine is ka, C-A-H, so adjacent over hypotenuse. So when we're talking about the cosine of u, we are always talking about u here. Across from it is our opposite, connected to it is adjacent, and the hypotenuse. Alright, so in this case, adjacent over hypotenuse, 18 over 30. 18 divided by 30 will give us 0.6. Okay, then of course, again, they want you to find now of W, so we're doing the cosine of W. Across from it is opposite. Next to it is adjacent. Hypotenuse is always the hypotenuse. Notice how each time I start with a different angle, I have to define my opposite and adjacent because they will change. Okay? So this case, it's going to be 24 over 30. And 24 divided by 30 will give us 0.8. So again, you have sine. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. You have cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse. And then you have tangent, which was opposite over adjacent. All of those will be used here, not in this lesson, but the next lesson, to determine lots of different things. Okay? Alright, so now we have to determine which one of these we're going to use. So remember, we have so and we have ka. Okay? So we are here, we are trying to find the hypotenuse. They both involve the hypotenuse. The question is, what is 11 feet? 11 feet in this case is across from that angle, which makes it the opposite. So we have the opposite, and then we have the hypotenuse. So the only one we're going to use is sine. We're going to use sine. So we're going to find the sine of 35 degrees must be equal to 11 over x. Okay, so we'll multiply both sides by x. We'll get sine of 35 times x equal to 11. Divide by sine of 35 on both sides. And when you plug that into your calculator to figure out what x is, we will round to the nearest 2 decimal places. Should get 19.18 feet. Okay, so that would be the length of x in this picture. Alright, so again, just to recap on that, we used sine because we had this angle. Across from it was the opposite. This is the hypotenuse. So O and H means we have to do sine. Alright, go ahead and flip your notes over. I'm going to talk a little bit about something else here. It's called the angle of depression and the angle of elevation. So it's all on how you are literally looking at it. So if you are looking up at something, you have an angle of elevation. If you are looking down at something, you have an angle of depression, and that's all the angle. If you are looking straight out to how you are looking down, it's an angle of depression, and then angle straight out to looking up, that's your angle of elevation. So we are, alright, so you are skiing on a mountain with an altitude of 1,200 meters. The angle of depression is 21. About how far do you ski down the mountain? So we are trying to find this measurement right here. We are given this angle. So again, we're going to draw across here. Across from our angle is our opposite. This is across from our right angle, making it the hypotenuse. So the only options we have are either sine or cosine. The only one that deals with opposites and hypotenuses is sine. So we are going to find the sine of 21 equal to 1,200 over x. A little shortcut for you here. Anytime you have a problem set up like this, and you have the x here, and you have something else here, the shortest way to do this is to simply just flip-flop them. So x is going to be equal to 1,200, divided by the sine of 21. So then plugging that into your calculator, you will find, and we'll go to 2 decimal places again, of roughly 3,348.51 meters. I almost said feet, but we're talking meters here. Again, look at the angle you're given. Look what's across. Okay, opposite, hypotenuse. All right. Lastly here, they want us to find, we are trying to find x and y. We are given the hypotenuse. We need to find x and y. We're talking from this angle of 26 right here. So label everything you know. We know this is opposite, and this is our adjacent. So obviously we're going to have to do this twice. So the first one we're going to do is sine, and then it's going to be sine of 26 is going to be equal to x over 14. Again, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. We want to cross from the angle, that's our opposite, over the hypotenuse. Multiply by 14 on both sides. You're going to get x equal to 6.14. Okay? Then we're going to do the exact same thing for y, except instead of using sine, we're now going to use cosine, because cosine, if we remember, is adjacent over hypotenuse. So cosine of 26 is equal to y over 14. Multiply both sides by 14, and you'll get y equal to 12.58. this is feet, and this is also feet. Okay, so now you have learned all three trigonomic functions, remembering that it is sine, cosine, and tangent. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. With these three tangent functions, these three trigonomic functions, you can figure out any three sides of a given right triangle, as long as you have one of them in an angle. Okay? Again, lots of information covered here. Please bring any questions you might have with you to class, and we'll see you then.